players, I'm B. Hilly. This is my first video. I decided I was going to start making these if and when I ever made it to ladder number 1, which just happened recently. And Generic Pie and Strider 656 have been on my back to actually follow through on that plan that I had made. Personally, I never thought it was going to happen, so it felt like an easy commitment to make. I really don't think that I am the best player in this community, but I do think that more content is better, especially with Galahad B having retired from making videos, with Romsteel having retired from making videos, with Ira having just a lot going on and not producing as much content as he used to. Same thing for Generic Pie. I think that part of what makes the community successful and vibrant is not just the attitude that the players bring, but the overall ability to learn from each other, to put content out there, to analyze, to move the meta forward. I think all of that is awesome and great. And, the goal of somebody, at least in my opinion, who has made it to number 1 shouldn't be to hoard secrets to preserve that position. It should be to share as much as they've learned getting there, and hopefully those insights are useful. And if they're not, you don't have to watch. But hopefully they are useful to you. I know that analyzing games, my own games, has been useful for me. I know watching other people analyze my games has been useful for me. So I think in that spirit, those are all some of the reasons why I decided I would start doing this. I hope you find it valuable. I hope you like it. I wouldn't say that I have a YouTube quote-unquote style because I've never done this before. So, notes appreciated. Whatever people want to see more of, see less of, what I spend too much time on, what I don't spend enough time on, feel free to leave it in the comments or message me on Discord. I want to make sure that I'm not just making these to talk into the void, but I'm making something that's actually useful to this community and the people who play the game. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's jump into these matches. I've decided to start with my tournament run here in the 2025 World Tournament. In the round of 128, my first round that I played in, I'm playing against Size 16s, who is also a Twitch streamer and a content creator themselves. So you can look them up on Twitch if you want to watch some of their stuff. And yeah, let's jump in. In the first round, I'm playing Shadow. We randomized who was going to play which side first, and I ended up with Shadow, which honestly I kind of prefer anyway. I think, as everybody knows, Free People is not favored, especially with no balancing. And as a result, I prefer to get the Shadow, hopefully get a win as Shadow under my belt before I play Free People, just so I feel like I have a little bit more freedom to take risks when I'm playing Free People and not feel pressured to be at a 0-1 deficit after playing Free People and trying to claw back a Shadow and then get into a rubber match. So I personally prefer to play Shadow first. I know a lot of people do as well. I know Romsteel does. I think Ira prefers to play Free People first, but that's him. So without further ado, let's jump in. I couldn't be happier with this first turn draw. I mean, Orcs Multiplying again is the strategy card I would pick if you asked me to pick any strategy card. Cruel Weather may be a little early, but again, I'd much rather have it than not have it before the Fellowship gets to Mordor. So just having it, knowing that it'll be part of the game, is a useful piece of information to have as the Shadow player. And even though it's, again, may not be played for 4 or 5 turns, it is still a good card to start with in hand. So he draws his cards. I do Zero Eyes. I know there's a lot of debate about this. Maybe I'll talk about it in a future video, but especially when there's no tokens in play, and especially when my character cards aren't Nazgul Search, Nazgul Strike, or one of the tile draws that could potentially reveal into Moria. In my opinion, it's always better to go No Eyes. There is this downside, however, of if you go No Eyes and roll none, and your opponent rolls 3 moves, that's certainly a place to start the game from. So I start by playing Orcs Multiplying again. I think not a huge mystery why I did that. I mustered Sauron to war first. the intention here is to go do line. Given the dice that my opponent has showing, if my opponent wants to use one of those Will of the Wisps to block Old Forest Road, and they happen to draw one of the 3 scouts, fine, so be it. But anytime I have that card and my opponent doesn't have an H dice, I will almost always put Woodland Realm under pressure with a roll like this. So you can see me start to move armies in a position to do exactly that. Opponent moves. They don't block Old Forest Road, which for what it's worth, I think is the right call. Even if you have a scouts in hand, it's probably the right call to use those wills for the free movement, because 3 free movement gets you to Moria, and you no longer have that risk of being revealed into Moria on your second turn. So we take some standard moves. I muster Saruman to war. Third move. I go ahead and put Woodland Realm under siege with that sea dice. Most efficient use of that sea dice at this point. You can also see I've set up for an attack on Gondor with the armies from Barad-dûr. I feel like I probably won't need those armies up in Woodland Realm, given that I had the best mustering card for Dol Guldur and was able to put Woodland Realm under siege turn 1. So that last H dice is almost certainly for Saruman. It's been a while since I played this, so I don't remember exactly what I did, but that one seems like quite an obvious move. My opponent goes ahead and uses a ring to move here. I think I agree with that. I think given how fast Shadow is moving already this game, I think that there's maybe a school of thought that you want to save that ring to potentially move next turn. Let's say you roll 1 C and 1 Will, you might want a ring for a second move. And it's better to have that ring that you're using on turn 2 to try to get Gandalf be the first ring you use rather than the second ring you use, because then, it's turn 2 and all of a sudden you're at 1 ring. But I actually think against 0 eyes, taking a 4th free move is, playing a full sprint game is almost certainly correct here. So, I go ahead and bring in Saruman and we move to turn 2. Draw the King is revealed. Fine combat card, especially for Woodland Realm. Draw Lure of the Ring. Almost certainly not going to play that card for its text effect this game, given that the Fellowship has had 4 free moves. This is just simply not going to be a corruption game. Everything's just moving too fast on both sides of the dice here. Happy to have that ring now as well. I didn't talk about this turn 1, but really happy to have that ring because now I can also get the Witch King this turn, assuming I put something to war. I'm guessing I will, probably Gondor based on the dice. We'll see what my opponent rolls. Yeah. Okay, so this is weird. This is the exact situation I talked about. If you move once with that sea dice and you don't get to kill off Gandalf, you're almost certainly going to want to use a ring here to move a second time to try to get Gandalf with that Will of the West. And so you find yourself in that position I described where you're down 2 rings and it's only turn 2. Now, of course, you're down 2 rings and you're on step 6, theoretically. But the other downside of giving your shadow opponent rings is a turn like this where I roll no musters. I, of course, can now bring in the Witch King, assuming something I put one of these Free People nations to war. As I said, my best guess is I'll probably move on Gondor, given that my opponent doesn't have enough dice to muster into Minas Tirith, given that they only have the 1 muster showing. If I'd rolled 1 more attack, I may have actually gone for Lorien with that army that's in Mordor, but I'm 1 attack short of being able to do that. That would also come at the cost of being able to bring in the Witch King, assuming I had like a Palantir attack or one of those Palantirs had been another attack dice. Anyway, let's see what happens. Opponent starts by playing Power of Tom Bombadil to get the cycle. Great, makes sense, especially given now if I attack Dale, I move the north to war. The only downside of that, though, is now if I attack Dale, I put the north to war, and that's another way that I can get the Witch King. Okay, yeah, moving towards Gondor as I suspected, attacking Osgiliath. I use no card. Do I think that's right? Yeah, that's probably right. They Are Terrible isn't super useful. If I'm going to use the King as revealed, I'm probably going to want to use it for a cycle. I just go ahead and roll 2 6s. That's lucky. They get no hits. Better to be lucky than good. Yep. They move the Fellowship. Okay, and the miss. So we're almost certainly going to see that that muster die that the Free People has be used to do another move here. I draw a card. Sure, they move, trying to kill Gandalf. Zero reveal, not what you want to see. Probably here comes an eye, just because this is how the game works. A second zero reveal. Okay, so that's a huge bummer if you're the Free People's players. I had forgotten this. That they played the second ring for this hit and are desperately trying to kill Gandalf and pull one of the only combinations. There aren't that many combinations by which you would not be able to kill Gandalf here. You'd have to get a zero reveal as one of the first tiles, so that's a 2 in 16 chance, so a 1 in 8 chance of pulling a zero reveal on the first move. If it's an eye, you can just kill Gandalf. And then even conditional upon pulling that zero reveal, you then have a 10 in 15 chance of pulling something that's not an eye or the other zero. Just super unlucky. Yeah, super unlucky. They've now spent those 2 rings and don't have a Gandalf to show for it. So I go ahead and put Minas Tirith under siege. Something I'm guessing I was thinking of in this game, if they had killed Gandalf there and the will was therefore allocated to bringing Gandalf in, I probably would have used a ring here to go to Dol Amroth, rather than putting Minas Tirith under siege. Given that the will is now showing, if I move to Dol Amroth, they're almost certainly going to use that will to muster into Dol Amroth, and that would be me not getting the Witch King in favor of getting to a siege that is just as well reinforced in terms of hit points as Minas Tirith. So that doesn't make a ton of sense. But if that will had been allocated for Gandalf, Gandalf had been killed on that move, I likely would have gone for Dol Amroth there. All right, so yep, go ahead and get the Witch King. Drop him right into Minas Tirith. They flip the Fellowship. That makes sense. And I'm guessing I'm going to probably attack and use the King as revealed here. Yep, they use a Daylight. So do I take any hits? I'm guessing I don't. Yeah, no hits. Wow, just go ahead and... Well, I rolled too many rerolls, but go ahead and get 2 hits anyway. Sure, why not? And they get 0 back. Wow, I was extremely lucky this game. Maybe I should show a match next where I have to work a little harder. The game is being very, very kind to me here. So I press and draw. I suspect I was looking for, honestly, maybe a card exactly like a Relentless Assault or a Desperate Battle or a Deadly Strife to finish this off, given that a Daylight was just played. And if I didn't draw a card that was super useful as a combat card, let's say I drew Fighting Uruk-hai or something, I had that Lure of the Ring, They Are Terrible in my back pocket as a card I could use as part of this press. Oh, I go no card. That's interesting. Why did I press if I was going to go no card? I don't really know. But they play Faramir Ranger. I cleverly dodged their shield wall by rolling only 1 hit. Big skill there. They get 1 hit back. And we move on to the next turn. Denethor's Folly. Probably not going to play that for the text effect, given the state of Minas Tirith right now. They go ahead and muster in Peligir. Do I like that? Yeah, I think with the Southrons and Easterlings not at war, and they're not being really a threat, at least an obvious threat of Corsairs, which, as you can see, I don't have, but given that it doesn't feel like Corsairs is a threat, mustering into Peligir probably makes sense. I'm mustering into North Dunland. What am I thinking there? Oh, I have Rage. I have Rage of the Dunlandings. Okay, so I'm almost certainly going for Rivendell here. Although with Balrog, maybe I'll go for Lorien? What would you do? Rage of the Dunlandings. Probably going for Lorien, given that I have Balrog. And the elves cannot get to war this turn. So I muster another elite. That makes sense. Yep, Rage of the Dunlandings. Do my recruiting in Moria. Yeah, move out to Timrell Dale. Okay, so I don't even pretend to show Corsairs here. Okay, another muster into Peligir. I take the mustering point in Lossarnach. I bring up the units from Umbar into West Rondor. Fellowship moves, that makes sense. And I'm guessing I'm attacking Minas Tirith. I think this is probably a minor mistake. Using the C dice here. Probably should have been the A dice, and then I could have used the C to relocate Nazgul if I take it in 1. Okay, go ahead and use Lure of the Ring. Only get 1 hit. That's too bad. They get no hits back. Move the Fellowship again. At a 1, they take Gandalf. Perfect, yeah. So they're probably getting into Mordor next turn. So let's take a quick stock of where we're at. Woodland Realm is essentially in the bag. I have Black Captain Commands as a Palantir attack. I have Cruel Weather, so maybe they won't get into Mordor next turn because they still only have the 2 dice. I would much rather be in the Shadow position in this game. I suspect Shadow is about a turn and a half ahead. If Cruel Weather gets played to delay the entry into Mordor by another full turn, Shadow is then a full 2 turns ahead. In terms of military pacing versus Fellowship pacing, it's been a fairly lucky game for Shadow so far. The first turn, notwithstanding, even with the Fellowship getting to move 4 times in the first turn, I still got to do a lot of. I got to muster both Isengard and Sauron to war, bring in Saruman, and then move my military, ahead into Woodland Realm. So even though that first turn did benefit the Fellowship a little bit, given the lack of a 5th dice here, the Shadow's moving along pretty nicely. There's essentially 6 points that are under siege or essentially taken in the form of Woodland Realm, Lorien, Minas Tirith. And then Peligir will be an easy 7th. Dale will be an easy 8th, and then I just got to figure out where my last 2 are coming from. If at any point I draw into a new Powers Rising or something like that, Helm's Deep makes an obvious case for those last 2 points to get to 10. Okay, so I attack into Lorien. Great. Put them under siege. We move on. Shadow lengthens. Okay, so I have Shadow lengthens and Shadows Gather. I'm sure I'm wishing that I had Southrons and Easterlings to war, given the combat cards I have in hand. I don't think I don't have a single playable strategy card for Minas Tirith. So I'm guessing I'll cycle Foul Thing. I don't know, I guess we'll see. All right. No Sea Dice, but I have Black Captain Commands for use of those Palantirs when I need to move Nazgul around after Minas Tirith falls. So, okay, so this is a tricky roll if you're the free people. You've rolled your will, so you can get Gandalf. And you only have 1 ring left. So you'd have to use that second ring to get to try to get to Mordor, since they've got 2 steps that are in the bank and then 2 steps to go. I think there's a temptation to sprint for Mordor here. I'm not sure that's right. But if you're gonna do it, given that the Southrons and Easterlings aren't at war, the thing I would do first is actually probably use the ring first, rather than move with the will, because then if you're gonna get Cruel Weathered, and then you can bring Gandalf in with that will still. Whereas if you don't get Cruel Weathered, you can go ahead and use the will to move into Mordor, rather than bringing in Gandalf, and then just hope that your Strider Hides will get you there in 2 turns. I think that's probably your best bet as Fellowship here, because you really need to be thinking about a turn 6 military victory. Okay, so they go ahead and recruit into Pelargir some more. That army is now 7 hit points. That's getting pretty big. Attack Minas Tirith, I cycle there, terrible. I go ahead and really make myself confused, but I do get my 1/5 on my reroll to take Minas Tirith, which is all I really care about. I cycle into Ringrazor Abroad. That's great. Now I have 2 Palantir attacks in hand, and then a ring for that 3rd Palantir. So I actually have a very productive hand here. I'm assuming that this will go to Southrons and Easterlings. Okay, so they do choose to get Gandalf. I think that's right. I think going for that 5th dice here rather than sprinting for Mordor is probably correct given the board state. Okay, so I'm going to muster Southrons and Easterlings all the way to war. Ringrazor Abroad, excuse me, into Western Round order to attack Pelargir. I assume I'm playing Shadow Lengthens, or Shadows Gather here. Yeah, Shadow Lengthens. Go ahead and roll no hits. Opponent gets 1 back. I press. I'm assuming they retreat to Lamadon rather than Osgiliath here. That retreating to Osgiliath would certainly be interesting, especially because you have a muster in hand. But yeah, trying to shore up Dol Amroth as best as possible to get another elite. Wow. I go ahead and draw a shadow card or a strategy card, and I attack Lamadon. I play my second Mumakil, and go ahead and get one hit. Wow, my good luck from the beginning of the game has certainly turned here. And they do there and back again to put Boromir and a Hobbit in Dol Amroth. That's very interesting. Now, if you think about what I said earlier, when I was doing my points allocation, I hadn't included Dol Amroth in the points that I felt I needed, or where I thought I was going to get my 10 points from. So I'm probably fine with them spending resources in this way. My guess is I just put Dol Amroth under siege here to keep that army from running amok, and then don't touch it for the rest of the game. Okay, go ahead and play Black Captain. Oh, Black Captain to move up to Lorien. Why did I do that? Because they have no more elites left. So and they have no more mustering points in Gondor. So could that army from Dol Amroth break out? Is that this seems like a weird choice by me. Why would I turn on Círdan's ships so that army could get even bigger by attacking Lorien? Maybe I wanted to. Oh, I tossed my other Devilry of Orthanc at some point and drew another one. So the only real strategy card that I want to be using in combat here and do some more cycling is this Threats and Promises, probably. So I was banking on the side of doing some cycling. I'm guessing I used Threats and Promises first here and then used Durnsbane in the second round of combat. Yeah. Okay, go ahead and get 2 hits. My opponent gets 2 hit back. They take them as downgrades, makes sense. I go ahead and downgrade, and then here comes Durin for sure. Yep. Play a Heroic Death. Wow. Okay, so my pre just wipes it out, and that card play doesn't matter at all. As I said, it's better to be lucky than good. They don't even get any rolls back. Wow. Okay, so I guess that attack did make sense based on how it played out. I'm just not sure it's right to leave Boromir and a large army parked in Dol Amroth like that, especially because the army that I have sitting outside Dol Amroth, like, they're not really protected if they get attacked. If they were, it would be one thing if I'd left them in Pelargir, but if I was going to move them out from Pelargir to Lamadon, why not just keep going? Anyway, although I guess this was pretty efficient in terms of cards. The way that it panned out, I ended up with 4 cards in hand by using a Palantir to play Black Captain, attacking, and then needing a press and using an extra card, so I didn't have to throw anything away at the start of this turn. Okay, I draw into a Candles. I'm not going to play that for the text. As I said, turn 1, this is not going to be a corruption game. Turn 2, this is not going to be a corruption game. So maybe I'll use Dread and Despair at some point if I need it. Honestly, that card is a really good draw just for the purposes of keeping that Boromir army from running wild. Being able to knock out 2 combat dice if they do attack out of Dol Amroth is a reasonable use of that Dread and Despair. Okay, so I go ahead and finally roll a bunch of eyes, so a less productive turn than I've had in the past. My opponent gets 3 movement. They go ahead and use their will first, of course, not knowing if I have Day Without Dawn or not. I make use of those 3 eyes that I rolled in addition to the one I allocated and go ahead and get a hit on the first move, which just always feels bad if you're the Free People's player. Yeah, I mean, it's not super unlikely to miss with 4 dice. But it just always feels bad when you only get hit on the 6 and you get hit, even with that many dice in the pool. Okay, so I go ahead and move all of my Nazgul up to Woodland Realm. My guess here is that I'm just going to try to blow this up with a Deadly Strife in one attack here. Yeah. Oh, I get 1 hit. Well, That's not a very good roll, but fortunately, my opponent only gets one hit back. I think Azira is often fond of reminding people Deadly Strife averages 3.75 hits if you have full combat rolls and full leadership as Shadow, and your opponent doesn't play a card, you're going to average 3.75 hits. So 1 is not very good. But again, I'm still in such a pretty dominating position in this game. It's probably not a big deal. Whereas in in other games where you're counting on Deadly Strife to get you those 3.75 hits, and the Fellowship is 2 steps away from dunking, and you're using your last 2 dice to try to grab a victory from the jaws of defeat. That 1 hit on a Deadly Strife would be pretty unfortunate. In this game, probably doesn't matter too much. Still feels bad, but probably doesn't matter too much. Okay, go ahead and use a Desperate Battle. Get my 2 hits. So at the end of the day, that really, it caused me to use that extra Desperate Battle, but didn't really matter all that much. Okay, Fellowship moves again. They are now officially have taken enough steps to get to Mordor. I draw a strategy card. Does drawing a strategy card there give away the fact that I have Cruel Weather in hand? Probably. Interesting. Okay, so they move the northward. That's probably a mistake. I'm going to attack Dale anyway. Although, what else are you going to use that for? Maybe knowing that my last 2 points are probably going to come from Helm's Deep, maybe it makes sense to play that. Mustering Rohan to war. Mustering the north doesn't really change anything. I'm still probably just going to attack Dale here. Yeah. Go ahead and play my Swarm of Bats just in case they have the scouts to get into back into Erebor. Draw into Pits of Mordor. Fine. Now, do they take another move here? They do not. Okay. So that's almost certainly a mistake. The reason being that with Shadow at now, I haven't updated it to 8 victory points after taking Dale, but with Shadow at 8 victory points, I've been through 7 cards of the deck, so a 7 out of 24 chance, about 30% that I have Cruel Weather. If you don't get into Mordor this turn, you definitely lose. You're probably, in this position as Free People, as I mentioned, they were 1.5 turns behind. If Cruel Weather doesn't keep them out, they become 2 turns behind if Cruel Weather does keep them out. This game is basically set up where Shadow, barring some miracle, is going to win next turn. And if I don't win next turn as Shadow here, I'm almost certainly going to win the turn after that. Sitting at 8 victory points with Rohan, with Helm's Deep wide open. So yeah, I think moving here, especially given that the Fellowship is not in any real corruption danger, playing Mithril Coat here rather than moving is probably a mistake. Okay, so yeah, my opponent says, of course, and yeah, I mentioned it was my very first card of the game. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Okay, I should have suspected when you drew an S card with that Palantir. I asked in this cast if I was giving away the fact that I didn't have Cruel Weather by drawing a strategy card there rather than a character card with my 3rd to last dice. Interesting. So my opponent read that correctly but didn't take the action. Okay, so they shore up Erebor, not a bad choice. Something that I could reasonably do here is muster into South Rune, and then group up for an attack on Erebor, so I do understand why they did that. Curious why they moved to Bree with the second move rather than moving from Edoras to Westamnet. They probably should have used that other move to move to Westamnet. Yeah, because now I just start mustering up North End. I go ahead and attack Fords of Isen. They play Huron Dark. Yeah, that's a good play. But think about how much better that play would be if there was 3 extra hit points sitting in Westamnet, and you could be almost certain that Helm's Deep is going to hold this turn. Instead, even with that Huron Dark play, I'm going to move that whole army out. I don't really care if, at this point, Saruman dies. The game's probably over this turn. Oh, they had Eomer. Okay, interesting. So I go ahead and attack Helm's Deep. The thing that my opponent can't know in this position is that I'm sitting on 2 of the reinforcement cards. I'm guessing the way that I'm going to play the rest of this turn is I'm going to play both of those with the Palantir and the Army Dice, fly my Nazgul down, and then just go for the win in Helm's Deep. I'm going to go ahead and protect. I use some of the extra Nazgul to protect Peligir as well. Yep. So I recruit into Helm's Deep with those 2 dice as expected. My opponent has moved far enough to now be in Mordor next turn, but yeah, as I talked about at the end of last turn, it's probably over here. I start with Dread and Despair. Probably just trying to... I have enough leadership there that I still have 5 leadership rerolls, even with forfeiting 2. I'm guessing I probably did that, given that they were holding 3 character cards. Probably thinking about Nameless Wood as one of the only cards that could really imperil this attack at this point. So Dread and Despair gives me a good shot at them missing entirely, or at the very least minimizes the amount of damage that it's going to do. As it is, they are really focused on trying to do as much damage output to this attacking army as they can with this Valor. It's the only strategy card they have, but it makes sense to play it here, given that that elite is almost certainly going to get lost in the first round, so it's only playable right now. But a Valor into Dread and Despair never feels good. I go ahead and roll 1 hit. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. They get 1 hit. So they're at 3 hit points. I'm still at, after the downgrade, I'm still at 9 against 3, and I've got a Desperate Battle and then an Onslaught to finish this off. I mean, this is almost certainly over. So they get 2 on the pre-roll. That's great. But then I just go ahead and roll 2 hits. They roll 3. Okay, so they at least made that made this battle a lot more interesting than I expected it would be. Okay, so I downgrade. I've only got these 3 hit points left. I'm probably using a Desperate Battle here. I mean, only trying to get 1/5 on 6 dice is better than an Onslaught. If I play Desperate Battle here, the odds of me getting 1 hit on 5 dice is pretty high. The odds of them hitting me back are about 50-50. So, and if I miss on 6 dice with an Onslaught played, I should assume I'm only going to have 1 unit left to Onslaught with. And, if this doesn't work, even with a Desperate Battle play, I don't want to find myself in a position of having only 1 hit point left on Helm's Deep and getting Sortied or something next turn if this doesn't pan out. Because again, even, if we go to a next turn, my opponent probably isn't going to dump next turn. They'd have to move 5 times without getting revealed. All right, Desperate Battle. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so turn 6 military victory is kind of where I thought this was going to end up when, 2 turns ago. That is where it ends up. The 10 points were indeed Lorien, Woodland Realm, Minas Tirith, Helm's Deep, Dale, and Pelargir. Yeah, just something to always think about as you're making your way through these games of Shadow is where your 10 victory points going to come from. You could see that I was basically already mapping that out turn 3, I think. And the path to that, even with a fully reinforced Edoras coming to Helm's Deep and fully reinforcing that, if I hadn't been able to take Helm's Deep this turn, if Helm's Deep had been fully reinforced, I'm almost certainly going to take it next turn, especially with the extra reinforcements from Lorien and another turn to potentially roll some more musters into Orthanc. The route back into the game for Free People was pretty unclear about turn 3 or 4. Now, if they had gone ahead and moved with that will rather than playing Mithril Coat and Thing on turn 5, opened this turn with the dice roll they had, which was, I think, a 1C, 2 wills, an H, and a Palantir, and they'd gone ahead and used the one of the wills to reinforce Westamnet at the very beginning, or move from Edoras to Westamnet, and then put everybody into Helm's Deep with that H dice, then you still have 2 moves and a Palantir to hide if you need it And then, maybe Helm's Deep does hold, especially because you can play Huron Dark slightly differently than they did. Maybe Helm's Deep holds there, and um, they make it 2 steps and then get a real shot to dunk on turn 7. And we have a classic race of Shadow is at 10 victory points, and the free people are trying to figure out if they can make it 3 steps. They still have a ring left, so not out of the question. Yeah, I guess that's all there is to say about this game. Thanks everybody who has made it this far. As I mentioned, if you have any thoughts about style, what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of, any notes of words of encouragement or notes for improvement are greatly appreciated as I embark on this new journey of being a content creator within the War of the Ring community. So thanks for watching, and I'll put up another game in the next few days.